Hello everyone, I am Tessellating Hexagons, and yesterday saw not one, not two, but three countries pick their songs for Eurovision 2021, the second, the middle child of which being Norway. And I need to get serious for a moment here, people. I'm afraid of making this review, because the fandom's behaviour regarding Norway's selection has been absolutely disgusting. If you're part of that toxicity, you should be ashamed of yourself. Let's back up and explain a little bit, shall we? So, Norway's chosen artist who won the national final, deal with it, is one Mr. Andreas Haukeland, better known by his self-chosen stage name TIX, which makes a reference to the fact that he has Tourette's, and honestly I admire that people bullied him as a child, they called him TIX because he had tics, T-I-C-S, as in the things that people do when they have Tourette's. And he took that, and he made it his own name, and he owned it and controlled it, and honestly, I do salute that. As a victim of bullying myself, I stand this man. And the song is called Fallen Angel. It was presented at the national final in English, but when it was first performed in the semi-finals, albeit as an auto-qualifier, it was presented in Norwegian under the title Ut av mørket. I probably said that wrong, Norwegian's difficult, meaning out of the darkness, I believe. And also, for his winner's reprise at Melodi Grand Prix, he did a semi-bilingual version. There were a couple of lines in Norwegian. The general consensus is that the Norwegian version is preferred, but we'll see what he does with it in the end. I don't know. It's his song, he can do what he likes. Anyway, music and lyrics by Andreas Haukeland himself, and also Emily Hollow and Mathias Haukeland, though the latter two don't seem to be credited anywhere except for in the actual MGP show itself, so I'm not sure what the deal there is, but either way, small writing team, more or less a family affair. Good for you. Now, the reason why I'm afraid of making this review is because a certain high-profile act came second in the final, and people are being really toxic and saying, oh no, they should win, oh, TIX should be disqualified because he might accidentally swear, even though, less than 20% of Tourette's people have swears as their tics, so that's, don't be like that. But the other issue as well is, because those toxic fans exist, people who defend TIX sort of take the blanket assumption that if you don't like the song, then clearly you must be part of the toxic fandom who are opposed to him winning, and I'm a neutral party here. But at my mother's request, I did watch Melodi Grand Prix this year, and I need to rip this plaster off right here and now. I thought it was a really weak lineup across the board this year, just in my opinion. Now, to me, on a personal level, even the best song among them, I felt was a solid 3 out of 5 stars, but anyway, as I said, a certain big-name act ended up coming second, but because they took part at all, I fear that no matter what the outcome would have been, people will be either, oh, you're just salty because they didn't win, or if they had won, oh, you're just saying that because you stan them. And either way, I'm sure I'm going to get comments saying, oh, why are you apologising for your opinion so much? Because I'm afraid of the Eurovision fandom, y'all are crazy! I went into the show knowing that this song was one of the favourites to win, and when it came on, I didn't fully understand why, but I mean, I respect it, it's doing well in the Norwegian charts, so clearly there's something there that I just don't personally vibe with. I absolutely see that there are aspects to be praised here though, but I'm not going to sugarcoat the fact that I personally am not a fan, but I mean, I still respect the song. So, yeah, I won't let that taint my review, so let's get started and look at the positive points. First up, kicking things off, I have to give more than due credit to this song's main draw. It runs so thick with legitimate emotion. There are some songs like this where the lyrics sound like just words, but in this case, even though I know it's only a translation, and so quite a bit has been lost compared to the original, it's almost a completely different story, almost, I still find it to be a 100% believable performance. Watching TIX perform, I can truly believe that he is singing about an actual lived experience to someone. He makes it sound like it's more than just a story. The instrumentation backs him up in that regard too. Whether or not it's to your taste is one thing, but it is indisputably good at what it does. It absolutely encapsulates the feelings, the emotional mindscape that the song seeks to convey, and it wraps it up in a very well-packaged bundle of music. And also, off the top of my head, I think the entire song is performed in harmony. So everything about it works very well. Like, speaking as a juror, I cannot say a bad word about it. And then there's the live staging, which takes that even further, at least if we can forecast anything based on the M Gear Peer performance. It draws from the symbolism in the lyrics and presents TIX as being pulled around in chains by his personal demons. And while some people might maybe struggle to take that seriously along the same lines as Azerbaijan 2008, I will praise that he clearly had a vision and stuck to it to a T. The spectacle of the performance is in no way dull, and it feels incredibly dynamic, especially considering that he himself isn't able to move pretty much at all during the performance, so kudos there, that is really well done. What really seals the deal though for professional juror man Tess is that in spite of all of his personal life and background, in which TIX is said to be a very self-conscious individual to the point that he made the persona of TIX to sort of cover up his shyness, which I can relate to on a personal level, by the way. He brings an absolutely pitch-perfect live performance, even with all the chains on him. Seriously, boy's got studio-quality vocals and a hugely compelling amount of swagger. He clearly believes in himself and his song, and that makes for a very strong stage presence overall. Have your own opinions about the song by all means, that this is definitely an artist who is worthy of applause. But now there's the other side of the coin, and I will reiterate, if you're not capable of having a civilized two-way discussion, then just leave this video now. I've considered the positive points of the song, and I do encourage you to do the same, but in that same vein, I encourage people to consider what some people might not like just as fairly. You know, whether you stand TIX or whoever came second in the national final or anything else, you do not get to dismiss any part of this review, okay? Okay. For instance, for as comprehensive as the live performance is, I personally don't feel as though the song leaves much of an impression on me, and I've seen other people saying more or less the same thing, that what it does incredibly well, but what it does do well is relatively safe, and to that end, it's comparatively easy to forget about if you don't specialize in this kind of music. The live staging may well elevate out of that, but musically, it's more there to get your feelings going rather than to blow you away with impressiveness. I suspect that part of the issue there is that the overall vibes of the song are, to me at least, very reminiscent of the boy band music of the late 90s, early 2000s, rather along the lines of Boyzone, Westlife, that sort of thing. And the constant harmonizing throughout, I think, is kind of part of it. So if that's what you end up hearing in this song, then it can come across to your ears as of a tired and dated style. Like, it could be a new take on that style, but if you make that mental connection, then that might be where you're left at. And I won't kid myself, the victory key change at the end does no favors whatsoever in that regard. I'm never a fan of a forced victory key change. Some people are gonna love that, and that's great, but some people aren't so keen, and that is valid too. And finally, an incredibly me thing to pull the song up on. I feel like this is one of those cases where the lyrical corpus finds a metaphor, in this case that of the angels and that whole semantic field, and sticks far too closely with it throughout for comfort. I had this problem with Croatia in 2016, and that was my personal winner for that year. So it's a known issue, it's happened before, no song is safe. And I just feel like when a song has a particular image that it's working with, and it pushes that idea again and again and again in the lyrics, it can exponentially detract from the original impact of the metaphor. Not to mention the original Norwegian lyrics mentioned angels a grand total of, once? And this translation seems to have gotten far too stuck on that idea, but that's just me, that's just how I feel. Feel free to disagree, I encourage that. But for now, let's put it into numbers. As I said at the top of this review, taking this song in a vacuum and not thinking about any of the others in the national final or anything else, I personally don't find this song to be much of a vibe of any kind. In my personal opinion, I give it a 3 out of 10. There are aspects of it that I absolutely appreciate, but this isn't the sort of thing that I personally would listen to on my own time. There's not really much I can say to add to that other than to reiterate that this is completely just my opinion. I'm not a fan of victory key changes, and it's a style of music that isn't my cup of tea. I think it's done very well, nothing else comes into it, it's an objectively decent song, it's just not my sort of thing. Now, keeping that point in mind, I shall think as a juror, put my own feelings to one side, and in those circumstances I'm quite happy to call it a technical 8 out of 10. TIX is talented, he's charismatic, he's a brilliant performer with a stellar vocal and just overall live presence, and he strikes me as an excellent ambassador for his country and for Eurovision as a whole. In terms of composition and arrangement, the song was clearly put together in a professional way, which makes it all the more impressive that he himself is kind of the only person credited with doing anything on this song. Sure, the show itself also credited those 2 others, but whether it was just one person or just 3 people, this is legitimately impressive to show for those numbers. I'm just keeping away from a perfect top score because, as I said, I feel as though the lyrics really oversell the imagery, and the victory key change adds years to the overall feeling, but other than that, it is a solid song. It's just not my personal flavour, but I keep saying that because I want to be absolutely clear and in no uncertainty whatsoever. It's a good song, just not my sort of thing, okay? Now, putting the song to one side for a hot second and thinking just about the broadcaster, how was this as a response to last year being cancelled? Honestly, I was all set to be negative about this, but actually the Norwegian broadcaster did a good job responding to the pandemic. It did rub me the wrong way when early on, like after the cancellation last year, they said, oh, we're gonna hold MGP as normal. Like right out of the gate, they wasted no time saying that and sort of compounded that with, and we're not going to specifically invite Ulrika to participate or anything like that. So that started out as bad publicity, but what turned it around for me was Ulrika herself. Of course, Ulrika Brandstorp being the artist that they chose to represent them last year. Namely, she clarified that she herself felt that she didn't have an entry that she felt was as worthy of submission as her entry last year, and acted accordingly. If we assume that the Norwegian broadcaster knew that from the outset, then the fact that they were able to go ahead and put on a series of shows with such a spread of both big names and talented newcomers, especially in the wake of a global pandemic, reflects really well on them. Ulrika's absence doesn't reflect well on them out of context, but it becomes acceptable once you know the full story. And she got to perform several times in the show itself, including her entry from last year and her newest single, so on balance, yeah, it's fine, you did good. But the question on everyone's lips, will Norway qualify this year? I find this difficult to determine because I can't tell to what extent my personal preference is influencing my perception, or to what extent I might be overcorrecting for that. I feel like this is a possible but far from safe kind of situation. It all comes down to who's voting on the night and how well the performance works on the Eurovision stage. Bear in mind, Norway has a brilliant but not perfect qualification record, and that means that this could be taken well, it could also be left behind. We don't know yet. If they iterate on the ideas presented at Melodi Grand Prix, then they may well retain enough attention to get public support, and TIX certainly deserves recognition from the juries. But by that same token, if there are other more showy songs surrounding it in the running order, it could also get utterly swallowed up. As I said earlier, this song doesn't go for leaving an impression so much as it does just being a 3-minute display of feelings. Other songs might shout it down, they might elevate it, and fans need to be ready for either possibility. It's possible for it to qualify, in fact I dare say it's likely with the Norwegian delegation on the case, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't bet on it, but betting against it would also be foolish at this stage. But that's just me. Your opinions are just as important here. Listen to the song, tell me what you think. Will we see this in the final? I don't know. You could be the one vote that decides which way it goes. Either way though, TIX, brilliant ambassador, I wish you the very best of luck when you get to the stage in Rotterdam, and I do wish you the very best.